Hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you in person. Small room, few people, but it's enough. In recent year, I presented a lot of talks about Python and other technical talks, but at a certain point I felt the need to share with the community how much benefit I gained from attending open source community and all along my journey. Do you know this picture? Some of you do know this picture. So it's the wallpaper of Ubuntu 5.10. My story as Ubuntu user started 17 years ago when I installed this version of Ubuntu in a very old Pentium 3 powered PC. And that time I was writing my thesis on open source software, and I started using open source for everything, from work to hobbies. But the awareness I gained from then to until today is that taking full advantage of open source means get involved in open source. I'll try to share with you various ways I try to do this, and in the hope that will inspire you. Of course, all the examples are bringing on my personal path, on my personal journey in my communities, but I think the teaching can be applied in all the open source world in general. But before we start, I'll tell you a few words about myself. So I'm Paolo Melchiorre. I'm the CTO of 20Tab, a software company based in Italy. I'm a software engineer and a long-time Python backend developer. After using Django for a few years, I became also a contributor to the project. And as I said, I'm an Ubuntu user. But this presents me today. But my journey on involvement in open source started a long time ago. The first step in getting involved in a community is to choose the community itself. Open source community is big. We have a lot of smaller communities. And in my career as a developer, I used a lot of different programming languages. But when I was able to choose on my own, I chose to use Python. It's only one of the languages you can choose to program this day. But choosing Python, I considered some characteristics of the community and not only in the language. I caring about the open source license, the fact that there is a foundation behind it and not a single company, and is a community capable of giving a direction to the development of the language itself. And they have a code of conduct, and above all, they are welcoming and positive. Guido Varrosum is the creator of Python and the reference person in its community, and that is positively affected by the open and welcoming nature of the creator. But another community that owes a lot to Guido was the Zope community. In fact, Guido contributed to the first step of this community. And actually, Zope was the first web framework I ever used. The first step, my step for being engaged in the community of open source was joining a local community, a small community in Italy. I joined the community of user of Plone and Zope, and the one where I was closer. And I think joining a local community can be the first step for everyone, because there is no language barriers. You can share with other people common cultural backgrounds, and it's easier to share experience and also exchange mutual help. And today there is a lot of different local open source community, and so I invite you to join one of them. This is a photo of the member of that community in 2007. Was my first conference organized in my city. In fact, you can see the sea on the background. At the time, I was a newcomer, and I was afraid of not being so valid as a contributor. So my involvement in this community was a bit limited. But being part of that community is also not so great. I was able to learn Python, and I was able to participate in the bigger community of Python. I joined the EuroPython 2011, and that was my first big conference. In that conference, I learned more about Python. I improved my skill. I connected with other communities in the Python ecosystem, and also I met companies that care about open source, and I discovered new projects. So I discovered about Django, that was another web framework in the Python ecosystem. In this photo, there is a Plon developers during the EuroPython 2011, and some of them I meet again during conferences. Some of them are joining the Django community too, and other I follow only on social networks. And I think that this means that people are more important in this context than technology and talks. I think it's the main part of being involved in a community, connecting with people that you can meet 10, 15 years later. After the conference, I started using Django that I just discovered in that conference. And was for me a way to deep dive in this technology, and to being more experienced, I did better steps to that. So I used more modern version of Python. I tried the quick start tutorial, the official documentation, and I started also following the official project channel, chat and mailing list. And above all, I started attending community events for that community. And that took me to go to my first DjangoCon. That was a photo of DjangoCon Europe in 2017 in Florence. And the conference led me to feel part of this specific community, because it was the software I used every day in my work, and I was able to engage with the core developer of that community. I met in person people that developed the software I was using every day, and I was able to connect with them and also ask questions, exchange information, and it was very great. After that event, I felt more involved in the community, and so I started to contribute to the code, to the Django code. I was not so many afraid not be able to contribute, so I started working on a pull request that I opened to the Django core about UID generation in Postgres and Django. It's not important, the technical part of this contribution, but it was very important that I was able to identify a problem that I can handle, and I tried to solve it. And when I was ready to contribute back, I studied the contribute guidelines of the project, and using these guidelines, I opened a pull request, and I proposed the revision to the reviewer. And this process learned me a lot more than only solving the technical part. At the end of the pull request, I already learned more about how to contribute, how to write better code than I was doing at work. This is my first pull request merged in the Django core, and the great part was that all the reviewer you can watch on the side are experienced people that are people of the Django core. And I noticed that no matter how many experienced colleagues do you have in your company, maybe you work in a very big company, but it's impossible to find such expert as the core contributor of a specific software. They are the best, they develop the code, and so they are the better in that area. And so it's incredible how you can learn from having review and feedback from them. It's very great. Another step I jumped in was joining a sprint. It's common to organize in Python community and Django community sprints. to work on the Django, usually after a conference, 2 days of working together in a specific issue, in a specific feature. And I felt at the beginning that I was able to join because I never sent a pull request. But that day I had my pull request that I already showed you. And so I proposed to work on that after the DjangoCon Europe 2017. And I felt very welcomed in that process. I proposed to work on this pull request. I asked for help with 2 people that was there, and I received in real time feedback about my pull request, and at the end of the day, I was able to complete my work. And my pull request was merged a few days later in the Django core for Django 2.0 milestone on the Django development. In this photo, I'm with Marcus and Mark, 2 very experienced Django core developers, and they helped me to work and review my pull request. Also, that merging my pull request, I connected with them and also other Django core developers. And in the year, I met them again. They reviewed more and more on my pull request, and so we constructed a trust in each other. And it was the first step in creating this network of in the community of core developers. But following more the Django ecosystem and also trying to contribute back, I learned very interesting new feature like full text search. And after its release, I studied it and I tried to give a talk about this subject. Pushed by my company, I sent a proposal to PyCon Italia, which is my favorite PyCon conference. And in 2017 edition, they accepted my talk. The process of preparation of work was very challenging, but I learned a lot more than I ever did working on a working project, because I was forced to study more and to try to explain in simple words, complex concept. And I successfully presented my talk in Italian. It's something I suggest to you to start with your mother tongue. It's easier. There is low barrier to start giving talk. This is the photo I just gave my first talk in Python Italia 2017. The room was small like this. But I received a lot of feedback from these few people, and I learned the basic of public speaking and increased also my knowledge on that subject. And I suggest to you to try to give a talk starting from small meetups and more conferences. It's a great way to start. Another way I found very interesting to increase my involvement and also be a better community member was mentoring other people. Luckily, we have this opportunity in Django world. We have the Django Girls Workshop. I met them in DjangoCon Europe, and I found it was a very good way to contribute back, especially to newcomers. I was welcomed in that event. I joined one close to my city. They organized in a very different city in Italy, and actually it was very simple because I had to support people with low level of knowledge about Django, so it was not difficult at all, but was very rewarding because I connected with these people, and I received a lot of support by other mentors. And this is the photo of my first Django Girls group. I was the mentor. They completed all the workshop on the day, and some of them now are part of different communities. I think Fedora and Red Hat conferences, and they are very great. It was very great to attend that moment together. We learned something each other, and now we are still in connection, and it's great. They learned something, and I was forced to explain something to them and learn more about Django. Another step I did was proposing my talk in English. I have some issue with English and not very good speaking English, but I forced myself to propose an English talk, and they refused my proposal, unfortunately. But a few days before the conference, an organizer wrote to me saying, okay, speaker retired, so if you want to join in 2 days, you can go and you can propose your talk. So I gave my talk at the last minute, but I worked on the talk and was very something very far from my was very complicated doing that last time. But then I realized that the audience was way bigger and participants were international, and I got better feedbacks with the audience. I also received requests for giving my talk in another conferences. This is the photo of my talk at EuroPython 2017. And I was forced far outside my comfort zone, but the growing was better than before. And from then I continued proposing talk in English in other conferences. During the EuroPython 2017, I proposed to sprint on Django, and some people joined me in that experience. We tried to work on the Django project website, because at that time the research was not working so good, and we tried to replace the old search version with another one. And at the end of the day, we managed to have a proof of concept of this functionality. And the better part was that all the people in that sprint was very great in the field, and I received specialized help reaching that proposed goal. I learned also new approach from people from different areas in the world, and I was able also to try to manage a team formed by a very skilled people, and was a very great experience. This is the photo of my group working on Django during EuroPython 2017, during the sprint. And all around the room there is other sprints going on Python, also different technology. And so the atmosphere was very unique, because everyone was working so hard in different Python projects. It was a very intense, but one that I recommend to you. Starting from that point, I tried to improve the Django website, because other than the Django code, the website stuff for a project is very important. And I discovered that the search function was delegated to an external search engine. So I proposed in the main list to replace that search engine and use only Django itself and Postgres, the database they are already using. And the discussion involved many Django developers, and after the proof of concept we made during the sprint, I worked on a fully functional pull request. And after a few months of reviewing and accepting, they merged my pull request in the code. So this is the Django website search that I developed. You can use today in the Django documentation. And I added more feature from that moment until today, and I'm still improving it with the help of other contributors. This was an occasion to me to work on an important website, more important than one that I was working at work, and improved my skill of a software architect, and also was a way to give back to the community, and also receiving a lot of feedback on how to improve this particular technology. In addition to the official Django documentation, I learned a lot reading from other developer articles. Many other speakers also had their own blog, and they recommend it as a personal improvement. So I decided to create my static website. I used Pelican, that is a generator website built in Python and Django. And I started tracking all my talks on the site, then added small how-tos, and then I started writing also bigger articles. Writing articles allowed me to improve my technical writing skills. This is a page of my static website. In particular, this is the first article I ever wrote on my blogs. It's about my switch to Ubuntu 5.10, 17 years ago, and also about the fact that I started my blog that day. I recently updated the template by creating my own theme from scratch. I wanted to have an original theme, and I was able also to add all the features I needed for my website, such the automatic switch to dark version if the device that displays it has in that mode. And writing my own template made me improve my front-end skill, and since I usually do backend, it was very instructive. And I think at the end I'm the first user of my own website, because I often find myself reading again the article I wrote some years ago and I forgot about it. So it's a good way to log your knowledge. Another way to take more advantage of the content you create is to share it. Adding a comment form to the site allows you to receive a lot of useful feedback. Another easy way to get feedback is also to share it on your social network, for example, Twitter, Mastodon. But if, on the other hand, you are willing to receive critical but perhaps even more useful comment, you can share your content on news aggregators such as Hacker News. This is just the beginning of comment page of my first big article shared on Hacker News. To my surprise, it lasted several hours in top trend, attracting a lot of attention. So I got a lot of comments, some positive and some negatives too. But if you think you can withstand even criticism, I recommend that you share your content as much as you can. In the end, you will have learned a lot more, different point of view, and also you have improved a lot what you have shared. An effective way I used to improve my knowledge on Django and other technical questions was to answer as many questions as possible from other developers. For example, at some point, I decided to deepen in the Django ORM, and so I studied all the official documentation, and then I went to Stack Overflow to look for questions with interesting problems. And I tried to solve those problems myself without reading the answer from others. At the end, I sent an answer and received several comments and votes, and in some cases I have had the opportunity to write article about it. So the most important thing for me was the question and the answer. For example, to answer a question about Django query sets, I faced with a new problem I never met during my day job. I tried to solve it, and I sent back my answer, and in the end I got a lot of positive votes and comments, and I wrote an article from this answer. And basically I find myself time to time to going back and read this solution, because I don't remember, but it was very useful in so many occasions. Another point I suggest to you to do is help to translate documentation, because it was, for me, a great barrier between me and my involvement in the community. Also, in the group of Italian Django developers, there are a lot of newcomers that don't speak English very well. And so we started trying to translate a lot more of the documentation for Django, Python, or other communities and software. We subscribe to the Transifex in the case, and we locate the new untranslated section, And we relied on early translated string when we were in doubt. And trying to translate some part of the documentation helped me to realize that I never thought about words and terminology in Italian. And that helped a lot of newcomers, and in which we received a lot of great comments. This is the pull request that merged the Italian translation in Django 1 year ago, and working on that we received a lot of comments, also funny one, but I discovered a totally new section of the documentation I never read about, because never was not so in the main pages, and no one ever translated ever. So I discovered this new part and was very useful, and now they are translated also for other people. There is tons of other ways you can use to improve as a developer, and the following are just some of the techniques that I also use. I subscribe usually to project mailing list, check GitHub notification, read the official forum of Django and other projects, and I enter chat channel and also local Telegram groups. For example, we have Telegram groups for Django in Italy. I tried to list the way I personally use to get more involved with Django, and these are several to me personally, but I recommend that you get inspired by other open source developers. To do so, usually I read their blogs, I follow their social account, subscribe their video channels, and I listen also podcast episodes and read their books. It was impossible for me to list them, all the people I follow, all the other developers I follow, but at the end of the talk I share with you my social contacts, and so you can discover the people I follow. In case you found this interesting, I invite you to read and share this presentation because it's released with Creative Commons license. 20Tab is the company that encouraged me and support me from the starting in the journey I described to you, and every day as a company we contributed to open source and its community. You can find here all its content. This is also my personal contacts. If you want to find about my involvement in open source, you can use that. This QR code, with this QR code, you can download this presentation from my website directly. Before saying goodbye, I want to thank all the open source users, contributors, communities, and company that was involved in open source. But in particular, Canonical, that 16 years ago sent this free CD to me. I was a young Ubuntu user, and I started sharing them with other people, and I'm still here virtually sharing Ubuntu with others and this knowledge. Grazie. So if someone has a question, otherwise, great.
So it was really interesting to see your...
The microphone here? There's one?
Yeah, it was really interesting to see your journey as a developer, and also, getting attracted to the Django community and then gradually contributing more and more. If you should name two of the things which made your developer onboarding experience in Django, what would they be? What are the two things that were crucial, or the most important things that were crucial for you to be involved?
Yeah, I tried to explain that joining the DjangoCon conference was the key point for me, because I felt very welcomed in that community. I met a lot of welcoming people, also great developer, 10 years experienced developers, was very friendly, and I felt so many welcome that I say, okay, this is a great community, I want to share back something, and I want to contribute to be part of these great people. that was the example that other people gave to me, other than the technical part that I already know that Django was great for my needs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.